An unfortunate bout of bad news right before the holidays as another shooting took place, not just at the Greenwood Park Mall, but also at the Mall of America that did take a life. So we'll talk about that, some of the reasons that this disappeared out of the news right away, and I think they're very obvious at this point, and what we're trying to do with this in society versus what our friends to the left are trying to do. So we'll go over some of that, then what that means and where we go from there. Carrie Lake has had her lawsuit dismissed, which means that it's now over and Katie Hobbs is the governor. And Katie Hobbs is not taking this laying down. In fact, coming out and saying that now it's time for some sanctions. So we'll go over some of that and what's going to happen in Arizona and what this means going forward. Greg Abbott got in the news over the weekend because he bussed another load of migrants to the Naval Observatory on Christmas Eve. Was it Christmas Eve or Christmas Day? One of the two. But the left is outraged basically because of the cold outside. But we'll talk about that and where we go from there. And Mike Pence has a brief moment where he is said to be running for president. And then his publicist says, oh, no, just kidding. It's going to be all this and more. It's really cold in here. I am Jay Edgar. And this is Contemporary. So, let's take stock of how my night's going so far. Well, first off, it's 45 minutes past when Contemporary is supposed to start. For reasons. I guess, like, throughout the day it was actually fine. It was a little bit slow today, but at work. But, I mean, there wasn't really anything bad happening while I was there. We went ahead and got a few things done and everything. But I walked in, and, not freezing cold, but noticeable that it was warmer in the hallway than it was in this little closet that I live in here. And, put my hand over the vent over here, which is right over here, and it's blowing cold air. I've determined that the maximum heat that my heating unit here can get is 62 degrees. Which is not unlivable, but it's cold, and it's outside of contract too, by the way. And it had been sitting there and running for pretty much the entire day, so my electric bill coming out of this first month is going to look fantastic, I know. So there's going to be that aspect of everything, plus the fact it's electric heat. It's going to make everything look fantastic. We're not even going to go off on that. But then it turns out, by the way, that there was a power outage here at some point. And for whatever reason, and obviously it didn't happen to me when I was on the laptop, because if the power went out on the laptop, then there was a battery in place. I think my phone's ringing. No, it was a text. There's a couple texts, actually. Where was I going with that? So on the laptop, then there were power outages in my old place when I had the laptop, but the battery kept it going for long enough that it would, go through a regular shutdown cycle if the battery ran out, but for the most part, it kept everything alive, and there was a keep alive memory on there. Yeah, for whatever reason, if I shut down, if there's a sudden shutdown on OBS here, it keeps all my scenes. But if I lose power, if I lose electricity, all of my scenes disappear, which means I don't have KTZed Redemption anymore, or the double screen if I wanted to have a guest on. I gotta go set all that back up. Luckily, I can reset some of my gaming stuff because I have the template. I'm using the same template now for the news, so yeah, I had to go back and set every single scene up manually once again. My microphone had to get set up manually, my desktop audio had to get set up manually, so we had that aspect running on top of everything. And on top of everything else, I opened up OBS. I'm like, no! I saw the blank screen in the middle. I'm like, no! When I realized what was happening there, I had no news set up for anything. There was one other thing that happened. What was the other thing that happened? Something else happened right in the midst of it, and I can't even think of what it is right now. But yeah, we're here, and nothing will stop me, by the way, from coming out here and doing the news for you guys. I love doing this, even if for the people who come back and check it out on the replay. I love doing this, I love setting this up, and I'm here for you guys. So that's what we have coming off of that. Oh, and by the way, my third monitor is not working either, so I had to go set everything up so I can do everything off of one scene monitor too. So yeah, happy Christmas to me. I'm extremely frustrated right now, but I'm still having a better night than Kamala Harris did on Christmas night. So we're going to get into it. We're going to get right into the news and talk about it. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, as we bring together a slew of people who are here to bring you news, culture, and commentary from the common man for the common man. That is right. It has been too long that we get our news from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses in some cases. So instead, talk to somebody, listen to somebody who has had to make some of the same decisions that you are. Go check out all these great creators as our New Year's resolution, in spite of the fact that it may be finding a new studio right now, because I'm not happy about the way that this all was handled. But on top of all that, go check out all that great programming as we go into the new year, looking to bring you a new website, a new news experience, new articles, new writers, great classics, people that you know, people that you love. I am going to try to take over and get involved, at least tangentially, with the media group, because there are some people on that group that I do want to keep on, that I was intending to bring on once we get everything started here. But go check out all that great programming that I have offered up so far as we look into this and get into the news. And we're going to start today with the finance, as we always do. So let's look in at the Dow. Excuse me. And look and see what we have going on here. The Dow is at 33,203.93. And that is unchanged, but the futures are looming right now as we get set to get started here. Obviously, no trading today because of the Christmas holiday being observed, and it's part of the reason it was so slow at work today as well, because 95% of my customers also had a Christmas holiday today, so that's what we see coming off of that. But coming from Friday's last trading, it is up 176.44, about 0.5% on Friday's limited trade. Looking in at your Bitcoin, which is trading, but we were managed to get it right as it started here, so let's get a refresh off of that. It looks like it is trending down. We'll bring it out to the 5-day to see what happened over the Christmas holiday. And it looks like it stayed steady throughout the Christmas holidays since we last saw it, dipping a little bit coming into the 26th and then rising right back up to a new spike. And another big spike coming up today before dropping off once again, bringing us back down to 16,839.60. That is up on the 5-day, 24.40, or about 0.15% over the past 5 days. Looking into the gas prices around the Madison area, and we see 280 on the Isthmus, which is a rise. 290 entering the Isthmus, which is a rise. 290 on the outset. 269, which is holding steady as you leave town at the BP, but over on the west side, 290, 280. The other quick trip has actually disappeared, which I think is kind of funny. But yeah, we are seeing a rise in gas prices right now as the Strategic Petroleum Reserve tap starts to stop, and that starts to slow down, plus the demand that we go back and refill it at $90 a barrel, because that's a good deal for the American people. And by the way, a reminder for that, as you look into your gas prices again, the fact is that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is now competing with government money against your dollar at the pump. So they're always going to win out, and they're always going to be the ones that get the deal. So be prepared, and I do hope that you've made your arrangements after last summer's summer of high gas prices, and we'll see what happens with that. Let's grab one from Investors Business Daily and see what it is that they have to say. Dow futures rise, market rally not finished yet. Tesla Shanghai production halted, from Ed Carson. Dow futures rose modestly Monday evening along with the S&P and the Nasdaq futures after the long Christmas weekend. Tesla Shanghai halted production on Christmas Eve while China rival NIO unveiled new models. The market rally just finished another difficult week, but did bounce from Thursday's lows. The major indices were mixed, but many leading stocks came under further pressure. The uptrend is looking shaky, but isn't finished yet. It's not a good time to be buying stocks, especially growth names, but investors should always be looking for potential growth leaders for the next sustained market rally. Shift for Payments, Celsius, Impinj, Enphase Energy, and Box, whose stock symbols Box, are holding up relatively well in the current weak market. Shift for Payments and Box are consolidating near recent highs, while Impinj, Celsius, and Enphase Energy are trading around the 50-day or 10-week lines. None are actionable right now, and all could buckle if the market continues to weaken, but keep an eye on them. Enphase is on the IBD leaderboard, with Impinj on the leaderboard watch list. Enphase, Shift for Payments, Box, and Celsius are on the IBD 50. Enphase is also on the IBD Big Cap 20. Shift for Payments was Friday's IBD stock of the day. But growth megacaps had a rough outing, notably Apple, Nvidia, and Tesla. Finally, Tesla China rival NIO is holding its NIO Day 2022. I thought that was the holiday that they celebrated after the Matrix was allowing people to be free. He is the one. It has unveiled the EC7 Coupe SUV, A likely Tesla Model Y competitor on the high-end EC7 deliveries will start on May 2023. NIO also unveiled a revamped ES8 SUV, now on the NT20 platform, like its all-new models. Deliveries begin in June. NIO also announced next-generation battery swap stations and charging options. Is it still going to cost you $10,000 to swap a battery? NIO is ramping up with strong demand for its newest ET5 sedan and ES7 crossover. But easing COVID rules may be triggering a massive wave of infections, and NIO and other China EV makers could face production or supply chain hiccups again. EV giant BYD said the week that the COVID cases among workers is cutting production by 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles per day. NIO fell 5.4% last week, back below its 50-day line. Shares were well below the 200-day line. Excuse me. Tesla Shanghai halted production on December 24th, with workers set to return January 1st. A year-end production halt had been widely reported in recent weeks. Shanghai had already slowed input earlier in the month, with inventories building up rapidly despite a late October price cut and a substantial year-end incentive. Some workers for Tesla and suppliers have come down with the pinko pox as well. Tesla, which had previously denied output would be suspended, said the shutdown was for annual planned maintenance. Last week, Tesla dove 18% to 123.15 after plunging 16.1% in the prior week. Those are the worst weekly losses since the March 2020 pinko pox crash. Tesla is at a 27-month low, down 70% from its November 2021 peak. On the futures, Dow futures rose 0.4, S&P futures climbed 0.6, and the Nasdaq futures rose 0.75%. With Christmas on Sunday, U.S. stock and bond markets were closed on Monday, along with many exchanges around the world. Crude oil futures rose more than 1%, topping $80 a barrel. U.S. holiday sales rose 7.6% from November 1st to December 24th versus a year earlier, according to MasterCard Spending Pulse. E-commerce sales climbed 10.6%. China announced further COVID policy easing, downgrading the coronavirus emergency to a lower level. It's also scrapping pinko pox quarantine rules for inbound travelers on January 8th. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate to actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that is our finance for the day. There's not much because all the markets were closed, but I don't remember what this was supposed to be. But I don't think this is what I was supposed to have archived. Anyway, we're going to move off of this. I swear I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. Well, I'm not really a professional. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants still, after doing this for 3 years. Alright, we got to start on a down note, talking about what happened in Minneapolis over the weekend. 5 people arrested after a 19-year-old was fatally shot at the largest shopping center in the United States. From Tina Burnside and Harmeet Kaur. Now, I had not heard about this yet when we were on Friday night. I didn't know this was a thing yet. But let's have a look and see what's happening with this. We do have video of when the gunshot went off, so we'll come back and look at that in just a moment. 5 people were arrested Saturday in connection with the fatal shooting of a 19-year-old the previous night at Minnesota's Mall of America, the largest shopping center in the U.S., police said. The suspects, 3 17-year-old males and 2 18-year-old males, were arrested after police executed a search warrant on Saturday, Bloomington Police Chief Booker Hodges told reporters. Investigators believe the shooter is one of the adults who was arrested. Hodges said, "They're trying to determine if another shooter was involved. The suspects were expected to be charged with second-degree murder," according to Hodges. "We don't know why this happened," Hodges said, "and we don't know the why because the people flat out are just not cooperating and people don't want to talk." Well, snitches get stitches, so Hodges had earlier said officers heard gunshots on the first floor of Nordstrom just before 8 p.m. local time on Friday and found a man shot multiple times in the store. On Saturday, Hodges said an officer working the watches of Switzerland store saw people come out of Nordstrom, ran into the store, and found the victim. Life-saving measures were performed on the victim, but were unsuccessful. A bystander who was grazed by a bullet is expected to survive, Hodges said. Tim Walz said his office was working with local officials to provide support and resources, tweeting, "The violence at Mall of America last night is absolutely unacceptable." The 30-year-old mall, around 10 miles south of downtown Minneapolis, is a popular tourist destination in the Midwest with tens of millions of visitors each year. I've been there. I was very young, and I've not really ever seen a reason to go back, but I have been there. The giant shopping complex boasts more than 500 stores, more than 50 dining options, dozens of attractions, and 2 hotels, according to its owners. There are also 2 theme parks inside. Or there were when I went. I don't know if there are anymore. There was Knott's Berry Farm and Legoland, both right inside. Friday's shooting comes about 5 months after suspects fired gunshots into a crowded store at the mall. No injuries were reported in the August incident. Hodges said the fatal shooting was the first firearms-related homicide at the mall. There was a domestic-related fatal stabbing at the mall in '99, he said. A preliminary investigation into Friday's incident indicated there was an altercation between the 5 to 9 people inside Nordstrom. Store surveillance video showed a male pulling out a gun and shooting the victim, Hodges said. "We have an incident where if someone decides they want to pull out a gun and shoot somebody with a complete lack of disrespect for human life, I still don't know what we can do to stop that," Hodges said. The motive for the shooting has not yet been determined. So let's look at the video, and I'm going to talk a bit about this. And what I understand, because I don't understand the cities, because I don't like going there, but what I do understand about where this is and what's happening here, especially given the fact that we're not talking about this.
Frightening moments for shoppers after a gunman opened fire at the Mall of America last night. Video posted to social media shows the moment that gunshots went off in the background. Let's listen in.
So, babe, did you find the purse that you want?
That is just terrifying, and too many Americans have experienced this. A 19-year-old was killed in that shooting. A bystander was also grazed by a bullet, but is expected to be okay. Authorities say the shooting happened after a group of guys, about 5 to 9 of them, got into some sort of fight inside a Nordstrom store. The Mall of America is the largest shopping center in the United States with more than 500 stores and dozens of attractions. It is a place that families go. I'm glad to hear that most people are all right, but that family of the 19-year-old is having to deal with that this Christmas.
All right.
Quote, "The magic is gone."
So, let's actually talk about the victim here for just a moment. From KSTP.com, a 19-year-old killed in Mall of America shooting is identified. From KSTP. The 19-year-old who was killed in a shooting at the Mall of America Friday was identified by the Hennepin County Medical Examiner as Jeante Ramon Hudson of St. Paul. Bloomington police said that 9 people were fighting in the mall's Nordstrom store Friday evening. One person pulled out a gun and shot Hudson multiple times. A bystander's jacket was grazed by a bullet, but they weren't hurt in the shooting. The suspects then left the store and drove to the White Castle for food, police said. Surveillance video helped police track the suspects to an address in St. Louis Park, where SWAT teams executed a search warrant and arrested the 5 people at about 8:40 a.m. on Saturday. 3 of those who were arrested were 17-year-olds. The remaining 2 suspects, Tayshawn Wright and DeAndre DePrato, are 18 years old. Police believe that either Wright or DePrato was the shooter. Police have not identified the 17-year-olds because they're juveniles. All 5 are facing second-degree murder charges, and they will likely make their first court appearances on Tuesday. Now, I'm sure that by the names that have been released, you've got an idea of what's going on here. And I'm surprised this got talked about the next day. Like, I was scrolling through Twitter while I was trying to decide if I was healthy enough to go for Christmas, and saw things like, Jersey, My Wife's Son Reliant, and all the other usual suspects out there coming out here and say, it's terrible, we have guns in this country, and that's the reason that we have these things happen, and now it's happening at the Mall of America. But, I mean, there wasn't a huge amount of news coverage of this afterwards. I'm actually surprised it made CNN at this point. And I know that the names of the identified that's not going to make CNN, because I hate to say this, but the fact that these people on all sides of this were not white is going to change a lot of the coverage of this whole thing. And that's just the long and short of it. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm not trying to be racist, but that is the long and short of it. And it's how the mainstream media is going to handle this, because it's how they always handle this. This is likely either an altercation, as they said, then a heat of passion, or this was a targeted gang shooting. One of the two. But this isn't even going to make the statistics right now, because this is gang violence, and we don't talk about that. But out of Mall of America, and an F in the chat to Jonte Raymond Hudson and his family. But unfortunately, that's really all that we have on this. And this one's going to the memory hole. Let's talk about Kari Lake. From CNN, Arizona judge rejects Kari Lake's election challenge and confirms Hobbs' victory. From Greg Clary, Marshall Cohen, Sonnet Swire, and Eric Bradner. I wonder if Razor's got a video out about this yet. I haven't even gone to look. An Arizona judge on Saturday rejected Republican gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake's lawsuit, attempting to overturn her defeat, concluding that there wasn't clear or convincing evidence of misconduct, and affirming the victory of Democratic Governor-elect Katie Hobbs. No way! Lakes, who Hong Kong lost to Hobbs by about 17,000 Hong Kongs in November, sued in an effort to overturn the election. Maricopa County Superior Judge Peter Thompson allowed the two-day trial on some of Lake's claims, which concluded late Thursday afternoon. The court ruling marks a major defeat for Lake, who built her candidacy on her support for former President Trump's law. I'm going to editorialize an informative article. President Donald Trump's claims about widespread election fraud in the 2020 presidential election. They have to put in the L word. They have to. It's part of their contract. She has since claimed to have won last month's election as well. Hong Kong. Saturday's ruling is the latest blow for election deniers. Oh my god. So, I gotta sit here in the cold. Although the space heater is trying to keep up. They can't come and fix it right now because there's flooding in another building. They brought me a space heater before they sent all the rest of their hands out there. And now I have to get editorialized to like this. It's all election deniers! Not everybody who doesn't agree with your lock, stock, and barrel position is some sort of evil election denier. And some of us just have questions. In a tweet after the ruling, Lake, who sat in the courtroom during the trial but did not testify, said she would appeal the decision for the sake of restoring faith and honesty in our elections. Thompson previously dismissed 8 other counts alleged in Lake's lawsuit prior to trial, ruling that they did not constitute proper grounds for an election contest under Arizona law, even if true. But he permitted Lake in an attempt to prove at trial the 2 remaining counts involving printers and the ballot chain of custody in Maricopa County. The county, which spans the Phoenix area and houses the majority of Arizona's population, was a hotbed of oh my god. There's so much editorializing in this article. It's ridiculous. And it's clear that CNN wants you to feel a certain way about what happened here. It was a hotbed of allegations of voter disenfranchisement in the midterms and the 2020 election. And it's weird that people had questions about what happened in Maricopa, and all of a sudden, now we have a ballot issue where you can just dump your ballot in a box and it'll go get counted later on somewhere else. In the exact same county. After the election, Lake claimed the mishap with some printers in Maricopa was part of a deliberate effort to rig the vote against her. And I'm leaving out words because CNN is literally trying to make you feel a certain way. I'm trying to editorialize this back to where it's informative. Give you the facts of what's going on here and let you decide. But if I read this like CNN wants you to read it, Lake falsely claimed, because she's a liar like Trump, that the mishap with some printers in Maricopa was part of some evil conspiracy. Like, it's on there on the screen. You can see it. But the judge's ruling noted that Lake's own witness testified before this court that printer failures were largely a result of unforeseen mechanical failure. According to Thompson's ruling, Lake's team had to show that someone had intentionally caused the county's ballots on-demand printers to malfunction, and as a result of that, enough identifiable votes were lost to change the outcome of the election. Every single witness before the court disclaimed any personal knowledge of such misconduct. The court cannot accept speculation or conjecture, which, that is fair. In place of clear and convincing evidence, Thompson wrote. So, legally, what Thompson wrote in there is true, but it's slimy, to say the least. Now, I'm going to step off of me trying to be factual, and I'm going to put some editorializing to this. But I'm going to, I'm not going to come out to the top of this and say, I'm going to be completely objective from the top to the bottom. So, and I did say, okay, I'm going to leave words out to make this objective. The objective stops. This is where I look at this. If you want the only objective, do earmuffs. But I will clearly mark where I am editorializing, not just throw it in there and say, everybody who doesn't agree with me is evil. Where's the word that I want to go with? Okay. So, the way that Thompson wrote this, the court cannot accept speculation or conjecture in place of clear and convincing evidence, Thompson wrote. With that being said, now, this has been the first time, and this is part of the reason that I do think that, in spite of the fact that they never even heard any case in Arizona, Thompson at least took a second and heard this case. If this was the first time, I could see a statement like that. Oh, it's just conjecture. It's never happened like this before. There's nothing to look into. There's nothing to see here. This is all just hearsay, conjecture, everything else. But the problem, as I had mentioned before, is the fact that this is 2 election cycles in a row that have had a question, or a series of questions, in the same county, in a row, that benefited the same party, twice in a row. Pattern is still evidence. I don't know if you have to have 3, 4, 25 elections to make it a pattern, but pattern is still evidence. Alright, I'm going to go back to being objective now. Maricopa County Board of Supervisors Chairman Bill Gates a Republican who helps oversee elections, called the ruling a win for Arizona voters and American democracy. Arizona courts have made it clear that this is a quote. Arizona courts have made it clear that frivolous political theater meant to undermine elections will not be tolerated, Gates said in a statement on Saturday. And then he reached behind his back and got the payout that he got from the Uniparty. So that's where things stand. Part of the problem and part of the issue that I have, because now the allegation is that this is going to be appealed up to the Supreme Court, which is all well and good. You have the right to redress. The problem that I have with that is Article 2, Section 1, that does leave the election regulation to the states explicitly. Therefore, with that being said, I don't know if a constitutionalist Supreme Court can hear this and accept it. And what I mean by that is, yes, they can hear it, but if they follow the constitutionalism that they do, looking at Article 2, Section 1, they'll look at this and say, we have no standing to rule in this, especially when this is a statewide race. But we'll continue to watch this because I don't think Kari Lake is done either. I don't think she's going to get anywhere further after this, but I don't think she's done trying. From NBC, the retaliatory action. You went against the Uniparty. Now you're going to get retaliated against. You won't be able to live, buy, or sell because you don't carry the mark of the beast. Katie Hobbs seeks sanctions against Kari Lake after Arizona judge dismisses election challenge lawsuit. From Summer Concepcion. Democrat Governor-elect Katie Hobbs in Maricopa County filed for sanctions Monday against Republican Kari Lake, less than 48 hours after a judge ruled against Lake's efforts to have her self-declared the winner of Arizona's governor's race. Hobbs in the county asked for sanctions against Lake and her legal team after an Arizona judge denied Lake's bid to reverse the results of the November election in a 2-day trial. Lake, a prominent election... There's that editorializing again. They can't get away from that. A prominent Trump ally, I'm going to leave the editorialization out, was allowed to go to trial last week with 2 of her 10 claims, which allege misconduct with ballot printers and problems with the ballot chain of custody. Now, with the holiday, I will admit that I have not sat down and read the lawsuit. I do question, at this point, whether or not she went in and demanded that the election get overturned for her. Rather go back and look at the evidence and say, hey, there's something fishy here. Can we do something about it? And I will admit that if she went in and demanded that she be coronated the governess of Arizona, she went about it the wrong way. But I've got this feeling, and again, having not read the article, that that's not how this went down. If that is how it went down, I will issue a retraction and say, yes, that's absolutely how that went down. Maricopa County Superior Judge Peter Thompson denied Lake's challenge. We read all about all that. Attorneys for Hobbs, who had been Arizona Secretary of State for 4 years, joined the county in its filing on Monday, seeking $25,050 US from Lake, which includes attorney's fees for Hobbs and the state's most populous county. The county took aim at Lake's remarks before election, indicating that she would not accept the results unless she won, as well as her groundless and frivolous lawsuit after the election was certified. But keep in mind that Ms. Hobbs should not have been certifying her own election either. Before a single vote was counted in the 2020 general election, Kari Lake publicly stated that she would accept the results of the gubernatorial election only if she were the winning candidate, the county said in a filing. I would need a quote for that as well. Before you can get a sanction off of her, you need to prove that those words explicitly were said. But she has not simply failed to publicly acknowledge the election results. Instead, she filed a groundless 70-page election contest lawsuit against the governor-elect, the Secretary of State in Maricopa County, and several of its elected officials and employees, but no other county or its employees, thereby dragging them in this court into this frivolous pursuit. Well, that was the only place that had problems. If Yuma County had a ballot error, she probably would have drawn them into this too. But see, Yuma County didn't have any of that. The county out of the courts should not be used to harass political opponents. Oh, the irony of that statement. The court should not be used to harass political opponents. Now, please ask my political opponent to pay us a bunch of money. Enough is really enough, the county said. It's past time to end unfounded attacks on elections and unwarranted accusations and just accept the rule of the uniparty. NBC News has asked Lake for comment. And again, go against the uniparty and you will pay. I have an op-ed here from AZ Central. Kari Lake loses her lawsuit. Now it's time for her to offer Arizona a gift. This is an opinion piece. This is not necessarily the opinion of Arizona Central. It's the opinion of Lori Roberts, the author, and also not necessarily the opinion of Turns of Pages Productions, Contemporary, or your host, Jay Edgar. Let's read from Lori Roberts. In what should come as a surprise to absolutely no one, a judge on Saturday ruled that Kari Lake was not robbed of her right to be Arizona's next governor. This court acknowledges the anger and frustration of voters who were subjected to inconvenience and confusion at voter centers as technical problems arose during the 2022 general election, Maricopa County Superior Judge Peter Thompson wrote, but this court's duty is not solely to incline an ear to public outcry, it's to subject plaintiffs' claims and defendants' actions to the light of courtroom and scrutiny of the law. Naturally, Lake reacted to the loss with her trademark refusal to accept reality. My election case provided the world with evidence that proves our elections are run outside the law, she tweeted. This judge did not rule in our favor. However, for the sake of restoring faith and honesty in our elections, I will appeal his ruling. Or to put it another way, for the sake of building hope for a political future, one that requires her to keep her supporters in a state of perpetual fury. Now see, I'm not complaining about the editorializing here because this is an op-ed. Here in the real world, Judge Thompson bent over backwards to give Lake her day in court. 2 days, actually, which the judge afforded her every opportunity to prove that a Maricopa County elections officer intentionally rigged the November 8th election and that as a result, Lake lost Governor-elect Katie Hobbs. Instead, Lake presented a parade of witnesses who offered up opinions, speculation, and a sizable amount of wishful thinking to try to convince the judge that the Republican nominee was the victim of a fiendish plot by the Republican-run county. Yes, Republican-run. Right. Uniparty. But what's that old saying? Wishing doesn't make it so. This being Christmas, it would seem a good time for Kari Lake to offer the state of Arizona a gift. After 46 days of decrying her loss and defaming the state's election workers, Lake should muster the grace to accept the verdict of the judge and concede the governor's race. I don't expect Lake to wish Hobbs well, but she could at least acknowledge that Arizona has spoken, honk honk. Oh, I know, the chance that is somewhere between none and what the heck is in the eggnog you're drinking. Still, it's the season of miracles. What a bitch. Alright. Some things with this. I have some questions about the veracity of what happened in Arizona. Obviously. I question everything, so that shouldn't come as a massive surprise to anybody. But if I were running elections in my own way, there are a couple things that would be. Now, if the county elections board was the defendant in the lawsuit, I don't know that I would allow the case to be heard by a county judge in that county. I'm just going to come right out and say that. There has to be some neutral arbiter somewhere. And with that, I do think that Kari Lake has a case to come back and bring this forward and bring it to a different court. Because essentially, the government investigated itself and found that it did nothing wrong. There's just so much in this that's just wrong to me from the start. And Arizonans, if you do believe in your heart of hearts that Kari Lake should have won this, it may be time to start demanding that your lawmakers make laws that the current Secretary of State cannot certify her own election. And that there should be a neutral arbiter from the outside that hears cases of one person versus the government, instead of a government official from that particular government. Does this go to a district court? Perhaps. Do we actually hear some of the suits in this? Perhaps. But yeah, none of this smells right either. Let's talk about the cold. Let's listen first to Governess, Empress, at this point. The Dark Lady of the Sith, perhaps. Kathy Hochul, from Breaking 911. New York Governor Kathy Hochul on Winter Storm. It's very clear to me that the effects of climate change are wreaking havoc everywhere. Can't let that good narrative go to waste, right? Let's listen.
Last night I had to bring in the National Guard. The conditions, the blinding snow, the zero visibility, absolute whiteouts, it may go down as one of the worst in history. People are comparing this to the dreaded blizzard of '77, where Buffalo first got its reputation for having an unprecedented amount of snow. We broke that record again a month ago, so it's very clear to me that the effects of climate change are wreaking havoc everywhere. Last night I had to bring in the National Guard.
Yeah, I can't let that narrative go to waste. But some of the things that were happening in the midst of this, and I've organized these articles in kind of a way to show you the juxtaposition of how one power outage is treated versus how another one is treated. So let's look to the north, to Washington, in the midst of the weather. 4 Pierce County utility substations are vandalized, cutting power to more than 14,000 on Christmas. Now, this is a little bit of a different situation than what our other one is in, because this is deliberate act of terror, which of course they're never going to go after because, well, it's people on their own side. But this is from Brasida Holguin of Kiro 7 News. Over 14,000 people in Pierce County celebrated Christmas in the dark. The Sheriff's Department says 4 utility substations were vandalized early Sunday morning. I woke up and the power was out, said Thomas Morisata. We live right over there off 224th and we lost power. Actually, it's kind of been sporadic. It was off pretty much when everyone woke up, and then it came back around maybe 2 hours ago for like literally 10 seconds. And then it went back off. Then her mom lives down off 94th. And over there, the same thing happened to them too, said Isaiah Williams. The Safeway on the corner of 224th and Meridian was running on a backup generator. Lots of lights are out, and they're still not selling any refrigerated items, no frozen items, said Morisata. The Pierce County Sheriff's Department says that just before 5:30 a.m. on Sunday, they received a call of burglary to the Tacoma Public Utility Substation off 46th and Graham. When the deputies got there, there was no one on the scene, but they saw the fence area had been broken into. In this one, suspects cut one of the locks in the fenced area, made their way inside, and caused damage to the substation, said Sergeant Darren Moss Jr., spokesperson with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. Shortly after the Sheriff's Department was notified, the substation off 224th Street was also vandalized. Deputies called Puget Sound Energy, which also provides power in the area, and they confirmed that the substation off 144th Street was also hit. All three happened in the middle of the night, on Christmas Day, causing power outages. Nothing was stolen in those facilities, so it's a good possibility that they are related. You think? If I had to talk to those people, I'd just say, come on, it's Christmas. Why you gotta do that to people, said Morisada. As of now, they have no suspect leads, and they're asking folks who live near the three substations to check their security cameras for any suspicious activity between the hours of 0200 and 0600. On Sunday night, a fourth power station was attacked in Pierce County. When crews arrived on the scene about 7:30 p.m., it was on fire. The substation is located on the Kapowsin Highway near Graham, where it left more than 500 people in the area without power. The cause was reported as vandalism. But I mean, we don't hear any calls to come out and say, oh, well, you know, why can't is it Washington, Governor Ivey? No, that's Alabama. Why can't I think of the Washington lady's name? I'm gonna look this up. It's Kim something, isn't it? No, it's Jay Inslee. Why was I thinking Kim? Why isn't Governor Inslee making sure that everybody has power? Why isn't he out there personally hooking up power lines? Come on! In fact, they'll even give a benefit of the doubt to the people who are hooking them up. Power restoration in Washington State delayed as utility company discovers new issue as it attempts to repair vandalized substations. From Sharif Paget. After thousands of customers in Pierce County, Washington were affected Sunday when burglars vandalized 3 energy substations, power has been knocked out for even more homes after a suspect or suspects gained access to a 4th substation, vandalizing the equipment and causing a fire, according to an update from the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. The damaged equipment cut power to around 14,000 customers, police said, weeks after an attack in North Carolina left thousands in the dark for days amid federal warnings of extremist threats to electricity infrastructure. Tacoma Public Utilities said Tuesday it estimates power restoration by 2 p.m. Pacific Time, 3 hours later than initially anticipated, according to a tweet from the company. We know it's been a long couple days. We know that we've got deploying a mobile substation to restore about 650 customers. But I want to see what it is that they discovered while they were doing this. They don't say. They say they discovered something while they were doing it, but they don't seem to say what it is. But they're working hard. So, even though if they were in Texas, they would be being berated for not providing it fast enough, I will give these people, these hard workers, the benefit of the doubt myself that, you know, get out there, get it done, do it right so you don't have to go back and do it again. But I also noticed the difference of how people are being treated on this. But on the other side of it, of course, from Newsweek, Greg Abbott slammed as thousands lose power in Texas during bomb cyclone. From Andrew Stanton. Greg Abbott faced backlash Friday after thousands of Texans were left without power due to an Arctic blast slamming the state this week. The storm brought icy temperatures and strong winds to Texas on Friday, straining the state's power grid and leaving more than 77,000 customers without power. While the storm did not cause widespread blackouts as one did in 2021, some power companies were forced to initiate smaller blackouts to alleviate the power grid's stress after Texas authorities underestimated demand. The outages added political pressure to Abbott, whose admin has long faced scrutiny over its handling of the power grid. Much of Texas' power grid, managed by the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, is independent from that of the rest of the United States. Heading into the winter storm, critics raised concerns that the state's power grid could be left in a vulnerable state due to frigid temperatures, leading to increased power consumptions and adding strain to a grid already seen by many as unreliable. However, the power grid largely held up, avoiding a massive power failure on Friday, though concerns remain that conditions may worsen throughout the holiday weekend. Power outages were caused by other factors, including damage caused by high winds or challenges faced by smaller power operators, rather than widespread issues with the power grid. That did not help Abbott, who faced calls to fix the power grid after the 2021 crisis, avoid scrutiny over the power outages, as critics said it would be still less severe with a more reliable power grid. Just a reminder that Greg Abbott hasn't done a damn thing all year to strengthen the Texas power grid. As we face down this brutal freeze, thousands have already lost power, tweeted biologist Imogene Cancellaire. Alright, here's the issue that I have with this. Yes, inclement weather that you're not expecting, and I have issues on both sides of this, by the way. Inclement weather that you're not expecting causes infrastructure problems. We have this in Wisconsin from time to time. In fact, part of the reason I was so far behind doing Contemporary today is because there was an unexpected power outage today. I don't know any details about it even. But there was an unexpected power outage today. It happens, and it happens in inclement weather. But they said right here in the article, this was not a widespread failure like we had in the once-in-a-century storm that Texas had last year. You had a few power outages caused by high winds, maybe some ice on this, but we're not talking out for days while a certain senator tries to run to Cancun. We're talking a few people out for a few hours. It sounds like he strengthened the grid. But, given the fact that we are still having some issues, when the weather gets to cold again, Abbott, you do got to do something a little bit more than where you did. Good start, absolutely. Come up here, talk to our engineers up here. We'll teach you how to keep your stuff going in the cold. We, for the most part, and again, we have issues when it does get down to the -10 for days, but for the most part, do keep it going in conditions much worse than what you have down there. But hey, all the deference in the world to Jay Inslee, but that Greg Abbott, he sure is evil. And part of this might be because he does stuff like this. From CNN, more migrants dropped off outside Vice President's home in freezing weather on Christmas Eve. From Noah Gray, we've got video of it, of course. Several busloads of migrants were dropped off in front of the Vice President Kamala Harris's residence in Washington, D.C. on Christmas Eve in 18-degree weather late Saturday, and they've got to throw in there the temperature. More editorializing from CNN. So many of these morons over on Twitter think that CNN has turned into this major right-wing Nazi outlet. No, they're the same as they've always been. An initial 2 busloads were taken to local shelters. According to an administration official, more buses arrived outside the Vice President's residence later Saturday evening. A CNN team saw migrants being dropped off, with some migrants wearing only t-shirts in the freezing weather. They were given blankets and put on another bus that went to a local church. Churches can exist in D.C.? Really? Amy Fisher, a volunteer with the Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Network, which has been receiving migrants sent to D.C. since the spring, said the organization has been prepared for Saturday night's arrivals, having been informed about it earlier by an NGO working at the border in Texas. The arrivals included asylum seekers. We're going to see evidence of that from Ecuador, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Peru, Colombia, according to Fisher, who told CNN the buses were supposed to be going to New York, but were diverted to D.C. due to weather. Busloads of migrants have been arriving in Washington weekly since April. The D.C. community has been welcoming the buses from Texas anytime they've come since April. Christmas Eve and freezing cold weather is no different, Fisher said. We are always here welcoming folks with open arms. SAMU First Response, a nonprofit that's been assisting migrants since the buses began coming to Washington earlier this year, was also on the ground Saturday helping arrivals. The organization's managing director, Tatiana Laborde, described the stunt as an extremely inhumane, but said, if done properly, it could provide a roadmap to easing tensions at the southern border. So let's look at what's happening here first, and I'm going to weigh in on this because, if true, if everything that they've written in here is accurate, then the fact that they're bringing it up right now is a political stunt. But let's watch the video here first.
Buses filled with migrants who crossed the U.S. border in Texas arrived outside Vice President Kamala Harris's residence here in D.C. Where did they go? And Jeremy, who sent them?
Yeah, no respite for the politics of the border and immigration this Christmas season. Several busloads of migrants arrived outside the Naval Observatory, which is the vice president's residence. These are the busloads that we've seen arriving nearly weekly from Texas. This has been a plan of Texas Governor Greg Abbott's. Last night it was 18 degrees when these migrants arrived. CNN was on scene to watch these arrivals, which you're seeing on your screen there. Some of these migrants arriving wearing nothing but T-shirts on their backs. They were greeted, though, by migrant aid groups here in Washington, D.C., which took them to local shelters, and we were able to give them blankets. Of course, we know that this border security issue has become so political, but there are human faces, of course, to this, which you very much did see and do see in those pictures there from last night. The Biden administration, of course, waiting to see if Title 42, what happens to that with the courts. Currently, the Supreme Court is considering that issue, but the Biden administration has said that eventually they do want that Title 42 authority to lapse, which the Department of Homeland Security has said would lead to many more migrants trying to cross through the southern border. Paula?
Oh, hey, it auto-paused. Good. I didn't want to listen to that. Going into what they said, though. Now, if everything that they're saying in the article is true, and this has really been going on weekly for months and months on end. Number one, where are these people disappearing off to? Because for the volume that they claimed was coming in the spring, there's no way that the small area of the District of Columbia can absorb that many people. So where are they going? They said as much, that they don't have the resources to absorb that number of people. So where are they going? Into the interior, to disappear, etc. But why bring it up then again, right now? If you knew about this, if you're prepared for this, why is this a big issue now? Why is CNN covering this all of a sudden? And it's because they can tie this out to the once-in-a-lifetime weather event and use it for political capital again. See, when they started to take these people and they started to complain about the fact that this was happening, they lost political capital. It's cruel and heartless that Greg Abbott is sending these people to us. Well, you invited them here across the border. So let's let them come out to your cities. Oh, well, we can't take care of them, but you want everybody else to take care of them. They were losing political capital on this, and that's part of why this disappeared out of the news after Martha's Vineyard. Because they got caught with their pants down at Martha's Vineyard. But with that having been said, now they can come in and, these freezing migrants in the cold that have been coming in the cold for the last few weeks. And we're talking mid-Atlantic cold. So 18 degrees. Coming to people who are fully prepared to take these people. They said so. with places for them to go immediately. Why is this a big deal? Because now they can say, oh, look at the cold, and Greg Abbott let his own power grid fail. It's all theater. It's all political theatrics. And we know from what Peter Thompson said, that's not allowed. If you're a right-winger who's questioning election results, but hey, if you're in the left wing, you can be as theatrical as you want. And you can turn up as much outrage and rage and anger as you want, which is also against the rules if you're a Republican. From the Hill, Democrats outraged over Christmas Eve migrant drop-off at VP's house. From Michael Schnell. Democrats are blasting the busing of migrants to Vice President Harris's D.C. residence on Christmas Eve, taking aim at Texas Governor Greg Abbott, whom they blame for dropping the groups off in below freezing temperatures on a holiday. The incident was the latest salvo in a months-long effort by Abbott and other Republican governors to urge the Biden admin to bolster its immigration policy, and it wasn't the first time migrants have been sent to the vice president's home. But it will likely intensify the feud over immigration, especially as Title 42 hangs in the balance. Governor Abbott abandoned children on the side of the road in below. This is exactly why they brought it up again. So it either stopped for those months, or it kept going, but they now have something they can try to grip political capital off of. It's children! Won't somebody think of the children? You know, sometimes I wonder why they don't just rename the Democrat Party the Think of the Children Party, because that seems to be the plank of every platform that they put up. And then I think about their leadership and realize what it is that happens when they're actually thinking about the children. Because they're not doing it the same way that you and I would. Let's see. Without coordinating any federal local authorities, White House Assistant Press Secretary Abdullah Hassan said in a statement. But they knew it was coming. I mean, what part of this did you miss? Three busloads of migrants arrived outside the Naval Observatory, the Vice President's official residence, on Saturday, according to ABC 7, when temperatures were in the teens. Video captured by a reporter from the outlet showed groups of migrants wrapped up in blankets. One person was wearing shorts. The Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Network, a local aid group, took the migrants to a church to receive the assistance. But according to ABC 7, the organization said Abbott was behind the Saturday drop-off. According to CNN, he's been behind every drop-off for months, every week. And the local outlet said the group learned about the buses a few days earlier. Amy Fisher, a volunteer with the organization, told CNN that the three buses were initially driving to New York, but shifted to D.C. because of the weather. Yeah, we know about all that. It really does show the cruelty behind Governor Abbott in his insistence on continuing to bus people here without care. Fisher told ABC 7, going on to say that the migrants don't have clothes for this kind of weather, and they're freezing. Democrats again are criticizing the tactic, especially the timing of the latest episode. Worthless Governor Abbott dropping people off with no money and no means on Christmas Eve in 15-degree weather near the VP's residence, Joaquin Castro wrote on Twitter early Sunday morning. How Christian of you, Greg Abbott. Governor Abbott claims to be a pro-life Christian, yet shows no regards for the lives of children, shivering, and Richie Torres of New York wrote on Twitter. In a statement on Monday, Abbott spokesperson Renee Ease told The Hill that the migrants willingly chose to go to D.C., having signed a voluntary consent waiver available in multiple languages upon boarding that they agreed on the destination. and they were processed and released by the federal government, who are dumping them at historic levels in Texas border towns like El Paso, which recently declared a state of emergency because of the Biden-made crisis, she said, and going against the Biden admin because he doesn't want El Paso declaring a state of emergency because that devastates the narrative. Instead of their hypocritical complaints about Texas providing much-needed relief to overrun and overwhelmed border communities, President Biden and Border Czar Harris need to step up and do their jobs to secure the border. Something they continue failing to do, she added, claiming the White House is full of a bunch of hypocrites. Yeah, pretty much. We could just, kind of do the Title 42 thing and then they wouldn't have to worry about it. But, we don't have time for rational solutions, apparently. And we got the White House reaction to that as well. So, let's move on. Some other things happening in the wild world of what's happening out there. Federal judge says San Francisco can't clear homeless camps. I have no author given on this one. A federal judge has temporarily banned San Francisco from clearing homeless encampments, saying the city violated its own policies by failing to offer other shelter. Magistrate Judge Donna M. Ryu in U.S. District Court in Oakland granted an emergency order on Friday that bars the city from taking away tents and confiscating the belongings of encampment dwellers, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. The move came in a lawsuit filed on behalf of homeless plaintiffs that sought to stop San Francisco from dismantling homeless encampments until it has thousands of additional shelter beds. Ryu cited the evidence presented by the plaintiffs that the city has regularly and illegally failed to offer shelter to inhabitants before clearing the encampments and improperly seized or threw out their belongings, including cell phones, medication, ID, and even prosthetic limbs. The city's arguments in its defense were wholly unconvincing, the judge said. In a statement, Mayor London Breed decried the emergency order. Mayors cannot run cities this way, she said. We already have too few tools to deal with mental illness we see on the streets. Now we're being told not to use another tool that helps to bring people indoors and keeps our neighborhoods safe and clean for our residents. Yeah, you really wanted to be mayor, didn't you? Yeah, you thought it was going to be a major power trip, didn't you? Little did you know that there are checks and balances in there to keep you from becoming a tyrant. I mean, they fail mostly, but they try. And sometimes they succeed. Like this time. A little bit of a rare moment of Democrats doing the right thing. From the Hill, Ocasio-Cortez Chavez, only Democrat to vote no on spending package. From Michael Schnell, the Honorable and Venerable Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez, D-Twitch, was the only House Democrat to vote no against a $1.7 trillion omnibus spending package on Friday, voting no on the measure because of increased funding for defense and federal agencies that oversee immigration. The House passed the sprawling measure in a 225 to 201 to 1 vote, sending the bill to President Biden's desk. The Senate passed the bill in a bipartisan 68 to 29 vote on Thursday. In a statement on Friday, Chavez said she was concerned about the funding of the bill for immigration and customs enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security, in addition to the $858 billion in defense spending. Let's see how this works on sick voice and still a little bit of lingering sore throat. Are you ready? I might screw this up. This might be hilarious. I campaigned on promise to my constituents to impose additional expansion of funding for ICE and DHS, okay, puppy? Particularly in the absence of long overdue immigration reform. For that reason, as well as the dramatic increase in defense spending, which exceeds even President Biden's request, I voted no today on today's omnibus bill, puppy. The appropriations bill passed by Congress includes $8.42 billion with a B dollars for ICE, which is $161.1 million more than what was enacted in 2022 and $319.4 million more than what the president requested. DHS received more than $86.5 billion in discretionary resources. Ocasio-Chavez says the dramatic increase in spending for those two agencies cut against the promises our party has made to immigrant communities across the country, okay, puppy? Adding that the case, especially in light of the lack of progress on DACA, TPS, and expanding paths to citizenship, okay, puppy? The New York Democrat was not the only member of the caucus to not vote for the omnibus package. Rashida Tlaib voted present. The Hill reached out to the Congresswoman for comment on her vote. Chavez also took issue with the process by which Congress funded the government for the rest of the fiscal year. Typically, the chambers will vote on appropriations bills for each agency. This year, however, appropriators opted for a single omnibus package to fund all corners of the government. From the beginning of this negotiation, we made clear to Democratic leadership that we must keep the practice of voting on funding bills by agency, particularly controversial agencies like DHS, so members would not be forced to betray one part of their district in service of expediency, okay, puppy? Ocasio-Cortez said. We were successful in this approach this year, and we look forward to supporting such a package again this year, okay? Now, she did the right thing, but for the wrong reasons, of course, which is basically the story of Ocasio-Chavez's political career. And yes, the Chavez is deliberate, because I'm comparing her to Chavez of Cuba as the communist that she is. I mean, she wants all the rest of the spending and redistribution, just not on DHS. Because they might actually deport an American citizen. They don't know. They just look and see a brown person, and then they try to get that person out of the country as fast as they can, okay, puppy? Kinzinger. This is good news. Kinzinger says his child will be proud to have his last name, while other lawmakers will have kids that'll be ashamed of them. Especially when he's rich and you buy his girlfriend and his car and his first house for him. Because you have a congressional pension for the rest of your life, which is criminal, by the way. From Alex Nitzberg. Uniparty Rep. Adam Kinzinger of Illinois has asserted that while his child will be proud of his last name, the children of other lawmakers will feel ashamed of their parents. I have zero regrets, and I know my kid. I know this. He will be proud to have the last name. And a lot of my colleagues will have kids that will be ashamed of them, Kinzinger said, according to NBC News. Isn't your kid, really young? I don't want to go look up Adam Kinzinger's kid, because I'm sure that will light up a lot of FBI radar beacons. And I got enough going on right now, because it's starting to get really cold in here in a hurry. I'm telling you that right now. It is starting to get really fucking cold in here, excuse my language. I got enough to worry about without the FBI beating down my door because they think I'm going after the kid of a sitting representative. But isn't his kid really young? Single digits? Adam Kinzinger will be long down the memory hole before that kid even knows what his last name stands for. From U.S. News. Very short article from U.S. News. Mike Pence to run for U.S. President in 2024. Sky News reports from Reuters. And actually, the follow-up to this is also a Reuters article. Former U.S. President Mike Pence has filed a statement of candidacy to the Federal Elections Commission to run for the U.S. President in 2024, Sky News reported on Monday. Or so it would seem, but not all is as it seems. From Reuters, Mike Pence to run. No, this is the other article. Hold on, we've actually... Let me go find something else on this because that's not right. That's the one that we just looked at. I guess when I archived it, it brought up the old archive, which is the repeat of what U.S. News just reported. So let's go find something else quick to go. We've got one here from 11 minutes ago from the New York Post that said what this Reuters article I archived said before I archived it. Mike Pence FEC filing dismissed by spokesman as fake, while former VP weighs 2024 run. From Victor Nava. Like, come on guys, get it together. Seriously. You think you can run this country, run your campaigns. Former VP Mike Pence set political Twitter abuzz Monday when a filing with the Federal Election Commission indicated he was running for president in 2024. Except it wasn't actually him. Devin O'Malley, a spokesperson for the former Indiana governor, confirmed on Twitter that former Vice President Pence did not file to run for president today after eagle-eyed reporters spotted the online submission by Mike Richard Pence. The filing also listed Pence for President Campaign Committee with an address to a post office box in Anderson, Indiana, northeast of Indianapolis. It was not clear who handed the paperwork, with O'Malley telling one Twitter user, "I think someone pranked you." O'Malley referred to a request for comment from the Post to the FEC, which did not immediately respond. The filing was reported Monday by Britain's Sky News and the Washington Times. I thought Sky News was Australian. Pence hinted during an interview with ABC in November that he was considering a 2024 White House run and said that he would be discussing the possibility with his family over the holidays. And this kind of goes along, and I did skip over this, especially with everything else going on, talking about what happened with Parag Agrawal over the weekend, where the rumors started coming out that he was arrested for having kitty stuff on his computer. And it does seem like there is a concerted effort to get the MAGA people outraged and spreading stories that are fake to anybody who will listen, whether or not they're true. And I'm not a fan of it, by the way. I think that's kind of underhanded, but I mean, underhanded is the way of Washington, so why not? A little bit of European news for you. Nord Stream whodunit gets complicated as Russia takes steps to repair sabotaged pipelines. From Tim Pierce. Russia is preparing to make expensive repairs to a pair of natural gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea that many Western experts suspected Moscow had ordered sabotage to begin with. Moscow's latest moves complicated already uncertain theories about who could be responsible for the bombing at the Nord Stream pipelines in September and why. Swedish investigators looking into the incident have concluded that a state actor is most likely responsible, though they cannot say for sure who, according to the New York Times, a former newspaper. On September 26, 3 explosions sprung 4 leaks in Nord Stream 1 and 2. The bombings took place at 2 locations inside the exclusive economic zones of Sweden and Denmark in the Baltic Sea. After the explosions, many Western leaders and experts blamed the leaks on Russian aggression. U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said on September 30th that Russia seems to be the culprit. Experts hypothesized that Moscow was sending a threatening message against the West's underwater infrastructure, as well as cutting off a main artery for Europe's access to Russian gas fields ahead of the winter. But, see, and again, one of the reasons that they're down there fixing it right now is for the same reason. As they couldn't be the ones who bombed it. Well, they could be, but it's highly unlikely that they were the ones that bombed it. Here's the thing. You give up product to somebody, you get money back from somebody. Especially when you're monopolized on it. They're not going to pay you if they're not getting product. So, and this goes along with the, by the way, the who will build the roads argument. I love that argument on Twitter, by the way. When everyone comes out and yells, who will build the roads? Oh my god, the roads. Look at the roads. Let's talk about the roads. One of the issues that I take with that is, if somebody wants to get product to you, one way or another, there's going to be a road there. One way or another, there's going to be a means to get that there. Now, Moscow can come out and say, you build pipeline. Pipeline sabotage. I keep gas for myself. It get cold in Moscow. But they don't want to do that. They want the money. So they can go around, buy oil, tanks, aircraft carriers, etc. And can play the hero when Europe finally gets too cold to handle. Which, if what just moved through the US gets across the sea, they're in for a treat in a few weeks. They are definitely in for that. So, if Russia wants to get a product over to Europe, and the most efficient way and the most cost-effective way is the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, it doesn't matter how much it's going to cost. And the Daily Wire likes to point out the fact that it's an expensive repair. It doesn't matter to Vladimir Putin how much it's going to cost, because he'll make that much back in return. I promise you. But they're not doing it without complaints. From Reuters, Russia's Lavrov, EU not conducting a proper investigation on Nord Stream explosion. No other given. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Wednesday it appeared that no European countries were conducting a proper investigation into a series of explosions that ruptured the Nord Stream gas pipelines in September. After explosions on Nord Stream, which appears nobody in the European Union is going to objectively investigate, Russia's... Excuse me. Still a little bit of sore throat going on, folks. Russia stopped gas transportation through northern routes, Lavrov said. Russia's blamed Britain for the explosions, claims rejected by London. Investigators in Sweden and Denmark say they were the deliberate results of sabotage, though they have not named any possible culprits. There are days that I think it was us. The Washington Post, quoting diplomats and intelligence officials, reported on Wednesday that no conclusive evidence had emerged to suggest Russia itself is behind the attacks, as some Western governments and analysts had claimed in the immediate aftermath. It said some of the sources now believe that it may be impossible to establish who was to blame. No, it's not going to be impossible to establish who was to blame. It's just going to be extremely inconvenient for the name of who was to blame to come out. It's going to make a lot of things very complicated if it comes out who did this. Alright, one last one before we head out of here. Before we go and check out the Game Boys. From mylondon.news. Couple hate Last Christmas by Wham so much, they're trying to buy the song rights so they can take it off the air forever. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. From Barney Riley and Hannah Cottrell. A couple hate Last Christmas by Wham so much, they're raising money to buy the song rights to take the tune off the air forever. Thomas Mazzetti, 55, and his wife Hannah, 33, have already raised a whopping £51,553 to try to banish the song to the history books. Okay, the fact that this article is written already tells me you're going to need a lot more money than that, because Wham, which I don't even know who's... I think that's comprised of more than one famous person, isn't it? Yeah, George Michael. George Michael craps more than 51,553 pounds. All he has to do is go back and have VH1 sell his story again. And he'll be just fine. Hannah, a painter, said her hatred for the tune started 13 years ago when she worked at a cafe in Oxford where the boss played the song on repeat. And last Christmas she was talking to friends about how much she disliked it still and how much she'd pay to never hear it again, inspiring this year's online fundraiser. That sounds like very Grinchy behavior. So far, 327 people have pledged $62,100 US dollars, or 51,553 pounds, to get rid of the song for good. But the couple from Gothenburg in Sweden have a mammoth task ahead of them. For the rights to the song, currently owned by Warner Chappell Music UK, are valued between 15 million and 25 million. Hannah, a mum of 3, says, "I was studying English and worked hard to pay the bills, and the owner of the cafe had planned, well, she's Swedish. She's not British. Had planned a super cozy holiday season and made his own CD with a number of hits on it. He was only in now and then, so he didn't fully appreciate the agony the rest of the staff felt when Last Christmas played for the 111th time in the working day." She continued, "It started last Christmas, pun unintended, when we asked friends how much they'd be willing to pay to never hear the song again. Quite a lot it turned out, and when the song started playing this November we were reminded. Then someone told us it was theoretically possible to buy the rights to the song and take it off all streaming platforms. We asked around among our friends and spread around the word, and it's fun because people either love or hate the idea. Maybe next Christmas will be the last Christmas." So, the problem with this, and of course we'll be going right into the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition at the finish of this, is, as far as I know, because of all the covers that were done under different labels on top of it, I don't think you can eliminate the song entirely by paying off Warner Chappell. I think there's going to be a lot more to this. I really do. I think you maybe be able to stop the Wham version, but I don't think you can kill this thing. But profit is a great driver. And with that, we move over on to the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition. And then I'm going to get off air here and go try to warm myself back up. Alright, where do we leave off? I'm going to say right off the bat, this is probably going to be bad advice. But we are going through all of the Rules of Acquisition. Of course, the religious doctrine of the Ferengi, and I just listened to an interesting documentary on the Ferengi from an avowed communist named Steve Shives, who pretty much made his entire YouTube channel off of analyzing Star Trek. But he is a very, very much avowed communist. He makes Bernie Sanders look right-wing, that guy does. But he is pointing out, too, that the fact that, and one of the jokes that comes with the Ferengi Rules of Acquisition is the fact that they can quote it verse and title on a whim, just like religious zealots and Christians and evangelicals in this country. Which I don't think, I do think that it goes somewhat that far, but do keep in mind, by the point that the Ferengi were coming out and the Rules of Acquisition were becoming a big thing, by Season 3, Roddenberry was dead. Berman had taken over show running. But the 113th Rule of Acquisition, going along the same direction as the 112th never have sex with the boss's sister is always have sex with the boss. Do not recommend. This is not a good idea. I'm going to say that right off the bat. I can usually make a counter to this and say, okay, this is how we apply this in our real life, but no, 10 out of 10 do not recommend. Do not do this. You will have problems. Major problems. Problems that you do not want. So, that's all that I have for this. And with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. I'm going to go try to figure out what's wrong with my third screen and see if I can't get someone over here to get it warm in here. Good God. I gotta go find the outro music again too, because, power outage shut everything down. This has been a banner day, I'm telling you guys. Where's the outro music? There it is. Alright, so with that, we are out of here for the day. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. Everybody who came and hung out with me, even though we started late, because so much was going on by the time I got there. There was no way that I was getting done and out and ready to go by 6. I was sitting down to organize articles at 5:45. But thanks everybody for your patience and sticking with us. I know we kept it a little bit short tonight, but it was Christmas last weekend. We actually had a slow news palette anyway. We probably wouldn't have made it to 7:15 under normal circumstances. But with that, we will see you here tomorrow. With any luck, in a warmer studio, with some actual fix going on here. And at the regular time, once again, stay tuned to the Discord and the Twitter for updates for that. Looking forward to that. Stick around if you're on Twitch. We're going to go find somebody to raid. But if you're on YouTube, do consider going and checking out Mitch B over on the Porch Boys. Go check that out. And we will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar. And this is Contemporary. Take care.